Hello dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans on qualifying day here in Imola, and I am clearly a bit sad because Lando Norris indirectly called me a bit stupid. Why? Max Verstappen, he has done it again together with Red Bull Racing. He is back on pole for the 8th time in a row, putting him on a par with Ayrton Senna. It was the longest series of consecutive pole positions, so now Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen are tied for first place in this ranking. The 8th pole in a row for Verstappen was, I would say, the most unlikely of all, the one that surprised us the most. I admit it really surprised me. Lando Norris obviously was not surprised at all because he said who did not expect Red Bull in qualifying must be a bit stupid. Well, I admit I'm a bit stupid then. Sure, we already knew that Red Bull wouldn't be as weak as in practice, but that it would really be enough for pole. Yes, I simply wouldn't have expected that. Max Verstappen himself also said when he went into qualifying that he would have been happy with a top 5, but not at all with pole. Dr. Helmut Marko, I know you can think what you want about him, but one thing you can't say about him is that he's a confidence trickster. No, he always talks straight about expectations, and he also said that he hadn't expected pole position, so that was a big surprise, even after the 3rd free practice session. Things didn't really go any better for Verstappen. There were 2 interruptions, you couldn't really test anything, the balance still wasn't right. Then we went into qualifying and suddenly everything went well. Max Verstappen himself said it was the best turnaround in 5 or 6 years. He can't actually remember one that was this big. Singapore was similarly bad, but we didn't manage the turnaround, so we were really surprised. But it probably still wouldn't have been enough for pole under normal circumstances if we look at some of the data, because Verstappen had a wonderful slipstream from Nico Hülkenberg, who had just finished his lap on his last attempt in Q3. Verstappen in the slipstream on the start finish straight here. Yes, and then we look at the data. In fact, compared to his previous Q3 lap, Verstappen has already gained 1.5 tenths of a second by the chicane, i.e. by turn 2, thanks to the slipstream. In the end, it was the 1.5 tenths that made up the pole position. The McLaren wasn't even a tenth away from him. Verstappen said yes, he did make a difference. On the other hand, he messed up the chicane a little bit because he arrived faster than expected. As a result, he slightly missed the apex. The data actually says that too. 346 km/h in the slipstream, 336 not in the slipstream. Doesn't sound so dramatic now, but you can actually see quite clearly that he doesn't get the chicane quite as well as he did on the previous lap. Nevertheless, he gained a bit and lost a bit, but what he lost was nowhere near as much as what he gained. Then there was a very funny story about Verstappen's pole position regarding the fans. We're in Ferrari country here in Italy, and then there was a fair weather question in the press conference of the top 3 about what it's like here with the Italian fans, and they said Max Verstappen was actually quite nice. There was only one in qualifying. When he drove into the pits, he saw him give him the middle finger. And Max Verstappen then thought to himself, well, tit for tat. Then he also gave him the middle finger from the cockpit. Then said that when he drove past him the next few times there was no more middle finger. Then there was applause, so he obviously turned him around. These are educational measures or educational methods from the Verstappen family, as you would imagine. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, by the way, were able to confirm the story. Piastri said that yes, he did get the thumbs down, at least from him. Lando Norris also said that yes, he had also seen the fan, but he was obviously a Norris fan, so there was no nasty gesture from him. Yes, in Formula One we are still blessed with the fans compared to soccer. We have a great community on this channel in particular. There are always thumbs up for our videos. Big thumbs up for you, of course, for this great community. So let's turn around and go from Max Verstappen's pole setter and the Red Bull motorhome to the following teams, which were Ferrari and McLaren. Of course, these were the teams we were all hoping for in this duel at the front, or it is no longer a duel at all. There were several teams involved. It was not quite enough. In the end, Oscar Piastri was less than 80 thousandths of a second behind. His colleague Lando Norris 91 thousandths, so you can see how close it was. You would have expected McLaren to do quite well here on this track. It is a track that is a bit tailor-made for the McLaren, plus the update package which came from them 2 weeks ago in Miami. McLaren could verify the data here. Said yes, it all corresponds with our wind tunnel, but in terms of lap times it's even a bit better than our analysis said. So that was a very strong performance, also from the young Australian once again, who left Lando Norris behind him here on the track. But then there was an aftermath. He obstructed Kevin Magnussen in Q1 and had to go to the stewards about it. The steward said, Yes, that was an unnecessary obstruction. That's why there's a grid penalty of 3 positions. He will therefore start the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix not from position 2 but only from position 5. McLaren led the defense. I think we need to get out of the way a bit here now, otherwise we'll get run over. McLaren led in defense. Yes, it's obviously a difficult track to get out of the way, and Piastri actually tried it. What should he have done? Drive into the gravel pit, drive into the grass? It's just relatively difficult to do that here, or you break something. That's why when there was no other option, he simply stepped on the gas and tried to drive through the chicane as quickly as possible, but it still wasn't enough. The steward said that the team simply informed him too late. So, team error, but we know that from Formula 1 when we handled it like that. Starting grid penalty, Oscar Piastri is not really to blame. And at the Scuderia, if you read between the lines, the Tifosi and the drivers were expecting a little more than just 4th and 5th positions, which are now a little better due to Piastri's penalty. Not much was missing, but just a little, especially in the first sector. That makes Ferrari a bit perplexed. Charles Leclerc lost 0.3 of a second in the first sector. Carlos Sainz even 0.4 of a second. The rest of the way they were on a par with or even better than Verstappen, but they threw everything away in the first sector. With Charles Leclerc, I think you could tell that he was really disappointed. He would have hoped for much more. He tried to hide it and said, yes, the package does what we expected. We had never expected such a huge leap. That's what they said the days before, but overall I think you could see that he was a little disappointed. Carlos Sainz was a little less so. He said, well, we saw the GPS data and everything from Red Bull the day before. They looked better than what you saw on the timesheet. Maybe, but Max Verstappen certainly didn't drive into the gravel a few times voluntarily. So with Ferrari, you're not that far away. On the other hand, you would have expected a bit more. I'll be curious to see how things go in the race. With Sainz, it was once again the case that you couldn't really find the feeling on the soft tires. The soft tires were probably not used in the race, but we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. On Monday or Tuesday, we will also talk in detail with our expert Christian Danner about what happened here. He was also on site, by the way. We had some nice conversations and took some nice pictures. And if you have any questions for Christian Danner, please use the hashtag AskAVD and we'll answer some of them in the next issue. So hashtag AskAVD, feel free to comment below. If we look a little further back, that's a long way now. We won't take that on ourselves at this point. Then we come to Aston Martin. And that has actually become a bit of a problem child this season. They had high hopes. They had such a mixed start. Nevertheless, they were somehow still able to keep up with the top teams, even if they fell back to the bottom of the top teams, as they did at the end of last season. Now, Fernando Alonso has also disappointed. He crashed in the third free practice session at Rivazza. It shows once again that Imola is a sensational circuit. Mistakes are punished. Alonso got caught out this time. He broke a lot. They only just managed to get the car fit for qualifying. Then he went out, flew off again slightly, and damaged parts. So last place for him. Well, Logan Sargent was stripped of his lap times, so he didn't finish last, but 19th in the end. Alonso might even have to start from the pit lane. He says setup change, but there may not be enough spare parts of the same specification. So apart from the fact that the update didn't work either, it was absolutely a horror day for Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin. So, race Sunday is just around the corner. I was really looking forward to this qualifying. In the end, it wasn't the big battle we expected. Will it be the race? That's the big question. The track is not predestined for outstanding races, but there are a few factors that could play into our hands. The start, for one thing. Andrea Stella, the McLaren team boss, said that starting position doesn't have to be the same as turn 2. This left-hand bend is full throttle. That's why turn 2 is the first real corner. One of the longest sprints to the first braking point, so there's a lot in it. You want to put Max Verstappen under pressure, then Verstappen is also under a bit of strategic pressure because he's on his own at the front with Red Bull. Sergio Perez only 11th on the grid after a mistake. Ferrari and McLaren each have 2 drivers up front. They can put Verstappen under pressure at the start, but they can also possibly put him under strategic pressure with undercuts and overcuts. However, there will probably only be 1 pit stop, so it won't be quite as exciting. It's clear that it will be a stop race because the time lost during a pit stop is simply far too great. What we mustn't forget is overtaking. It's really difficult, but it's really nice because there are gravel beds. Mistakes are penalized, so anything can happen in this race. Of course, you can find out what happens in the live ticker in the app. If you want to watch TV, you can see all the times when it's being broadcast. So download the app for Android and iOS for free, or type www.motorsport-magazin.com into your browser the old-fashioned way, and look forward to a great Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. It's all set.